Alrighty, right, we're just straight into recording the next video about what we learned with tactics. So we played a bunch of friendlies, and then during friendlies we were sort of like changing stuff a lot from one half to the next and changing stuff during halves. We did a lot of chopping and changing, so we played a handful of friendlies, but we tried a lot of things. Like, we're trying things effectively that, in a way, trying to prove to ourselves like certain things that we weren't trying because we felt that they wouldn't work. We were trying those changes just to confirm that they wouldn't work for the reasons we thought that they wouldn't work. So when that was glaringly obviously the case, we typically just moved out of it from that half match to try another thing for the second half. But we also were trying a few things that we just weren't sure, and we just wanted to learn a bit and shuffle things around a bit, and just generally trying different variations of this stuff out. One obvious thing as well that might end up fixing a lot of our issues, by the way, I'm not confident that we've got these roles configuration correct. And I want to, but once we are confident, we can move into the team instructions. And it is possible that some of the issues with the team will end up getting solved. This is left from one other thing we tried, which we could explain. But yeah. But for now, we're just trying to get the role sorted, and we're just trying to. There's fundamental issues basically with we haven't got a good configuration of players or roles yet. I'm still not sure on this double box-to-box midfielder thing. Can explain. That's where we got to. So we didn't solve all the problems, but we have solved one, maybe, or we got a potential solution. And then there's also the question of which of these problems are really even problems. When it comes down to it, like, are these when we're facing these tactical, what are perceived to be issues with the formation or perceived to be issues with the tactics, how much of the problem is really actually even to do with the tactics versus the players, basically just not being good enough at things that we're asking them to do. So I think a good example of this, if we just go back to, I think this is loosely the formation that we set out originally with in these, that we actually won a bunch of matches with before we changed it. But there was an issue with this formation that, like, we alienating the striker a lot. You're not really getting the ball much. All he's doing is having some shots. He's not really carrying the ball up the pitch. He's not really getting involved in build-up. He's not really drifting wide or whatever to get loose balls. He's not really helping anything much at all. He's just getting some shots. That's it. Now, when you look at the player, it's kind of obvious why that's an issue, because for a player that we're basically saying none of your attributes matter really, except for your finishing and your composure. And to some degree, especially if you're not, like, if they're not flicks forward or whatever and you're running onto them, which occasionally they are, but most of them aren't. Most of them crosses into the box, build up play, passing it into them, etc. Like, then the control for all of that matters a lot as well, and it's bad. So you're basically saying, we're asking him effectively saying, all that really matters is your finishing, your composure, your control, and your movement. And those things are not particularly great. I mean, the finishing, the composure, and the movement are okay, but the control is bad. But the real strength of this player lies in the fact that those things are not bad, combined with awesome speed and aerial ability. But we're basically saying, like, your speed and aerial ability don't really matter, because you just need to stand there and we're just going to work the ball around in circles and try and pass it into you, kind of thing. So the issue is effectively that this is just the wrong archetype of player for the role that we're asking him to play. So that's one major problem. So, it isn't a problem if this guy is completely isolated from the build-up, isn't involved in anything, and all we're asking him to do is have 7 shots a game inside the box, and that's it. If he's got like 80-something finishing and composure, and if you can get him, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever, you get him 3+ chances a game, basically, you just know that he's going to score at least 1 goal, possibly 2 or 3. Like, if that was the case, it's not a problem. But it isn't the case, so it is a problem. Problem number 1. Problem number 2 is that this guy is getting loads and loads and loads and loads of the ball, and is being asked to constantly take on their whole team, constantly run in the box and have shots from all sorts of different places. We're asking this guy to have sometimes towards 10 shots in a match with his 57 finishing and his 36 composure. We're asking this guy to constantly grab the ball and try and take the whole team on. Speed, okay, or whatever for that. But dribbling, okay for an average player, but not anywhere near good enough for a player that you're basically saying, let's ignore our striker and all of that speed and all of that aerial ability so that we can instead give the ball to you and watch you try to take the whole team on every time, which is basically what we're doing with your 67 dribbling, your 27 strength, which as soon as anybody tries to tackle him, they're basically, winning every time just about, with your super low flair. Like, he basically is just not the right... He's okay or whatever, but the thing is, what you're asking him to do combined with what you're asking the striker in front of him to do or to not do, you want a different player. You want a player that's basically hands down the best player in your team. The way that this tactic is set up, these guys are box to box, they're coming back and coming up, coming back and coming up. The way that this whole thing is set up is you're basically saying every single time we attack, nearly every single time we attack, at some point, and likely a pivotal point in that attack, the ball is coming through this guy, basically. He's involved in everything, and which would be fantastic if this guy, for example, had it's not a speed issue, by the way. He doesn't necessarily need it, or he doesn't want to be slow. But 73, it's not a speed issue. That's not the problem. The problem is ideally because everything is coming to him. Ideally, you want more control. You want more dribbling. You definitely want more finishing. Long shot's fine. You want more passing. You want much higher composure. You want more flair. Movement, ideally a bit more, but not really a problem because he's just sitting at the top of the box and they're passing him first. Not the biggest issue because of the role and everything. So, much higher vision. And the aerial ability ideally would be higher, but it's okay. It's not that big a deal. And much higher strength. That's a lot of things. So go back through. Much higher control, higher dribbling, much higher finishing, higher passing, much higher composure, much higher flair, much higher vision, much higher strength. That's a lot of attributes that are much higher and quite a few that need to be higher. If all of those things were true, then basically this tactic just becomes awesome because you're just saying, give the ball to this guy, watch him beat everybody, and he'll beat everybody. Have those 7 shots a game, score at least one of them, and just run riot. And then having this guy in front of him also not have to do anything except have those 5, 6, 7 shots a game with his 80-something finish. Like, if you had those 2 players instead, this would be awesome. But the problem is we don't have those 2 players, basically, and because of that, it doesn't really work. It is an issue if if this guy is offset a bit or whatever, to try to let this guy get a bit more of the ball. But then you're saying this guy with his 57 finishing or whatever is having his 7 shots from a wider angle and missing the ball and hugely inefficient. It is a problem that this guy, he's just not utilizing that speed and an aerial ability. They're all problems. So a solution to help with the players that we have in the end was to do this. So what does this do? So it means that this guy, when he runs into the box, he's more likely to run straighter and drift less wide, and more likely to have a shot from a more front-on position, so that it's on target or scores or whatever. So it creates better shooting for this guy. It creates a bit more space for this guy to run onto. But mostly this change is not about this guy. It is a little bit about this guy, but it's mostly about the striker, to help the striker. So what does it do for the striker? Well, it means that at least the left side of these 2 left-sided players, and to a lesser degree the defensive midfielder and the left back here, so to a good degree a couple players, and to a lesser degree a couple others, it's a valid option for them to pass the ball to the striker and not through the creative forward. In particular, into this area here, because he's super fast, so they can bomb it there and he can run onto it first. If he's here, he's got further to go. If he's here, he's got less distance to go. So there's more chance he'll end up drifting to get it. And one of this guy's non-weaknesses is also his crossing. His crossing's pretty decent, so we're all right for him to drift, to pick it up, and to cross it in. And by the time that's all happened, we've got this guy in the box. We've got 2 box-to-box midfielders likely in the box. So we have got, even though we've only got one up front, we've likely got multiple targets for him to pick out in the box. So it basically just utilises his speed more. It doesn't utilise his aerial ability, mind you, but it utilises his speed more. And it just allows him to be a bit more involved, and have a bit of his own space out here. And if this guy's attacking is generally further up, so it isolates this guy a bit more and makes him work a bit harder, to have to do more with the ball, which is kind of, we're alright to want that as well. So it just works a bit better, basically. It allows this guy to utilise his speed more, and allows this guy to have a little bit more space to work with too. So it just helps a bit. But the real solution is to have completely different players, because the thing is, like, this position does get the ball just loads and loads and loads. So we played, quite a few friendlies. The other thing that we learned was we can play with it worked and it didn't work because depending on the matches, obviously. But we could change, what was it, deep line? We could change it to this and put the other striker in to the deep line forward, who's also fast and good in the air, but quite poor finishing. So he drops back to leave the other guy more forward. And this could work because then you don't have the creative forward, which is basically a role where you're actually actively telling the team that he is our creative forward. We should be looking to give him the ball. So you've stripped that away, and when they're trying to go forwards, they're going to go to these guys, and they're likely to sort of hit longer balls, more contested in the air, whatever, run onto space, whatever. But that's great for us because both of these guys are both good in the air and they are both good at running into space. So basically, we just did that change combined with just saying, let's go faster tempo and just like into space. So we weren't like doing direct passing or anything to just bomb it. We weren't just bomb because we still, at the end of the day, we don't want to bomb. We still want ideally a little bit of speed in the build-up, because a little bit of lack of speed in the build-up because we want the box-to-box midfielders and the winger to get up there to help. So we want to give them a bit of time, but we also don't want to dilly-dally around in the midfield. That's the key thing, because we've got one less player here to sort of help. Like, these guys are up here. We want to advance the attack and get them involved, and then allow them to bring the ball back to get these guys into play, rather than potentially passing around in circles between these guys, basically. So the faster tempo in the interspace is just sort of saying, hey, it's alright just to try and get it up, hit it into space, and we'll try and win it, and if we don't, we don't. But that's better than passing back here. And there's more chance of passing back here because, again, without the creative forward, who is a bit deeper, so it is a bit more linked to the midfield, and with effectively the built-in instruction to the team that says, hey, pass the ball to me, so they're actively looking to do it. So one reason why we can play with a slower tempo when we have the creative forward is because the ball is sort of naturally arriving to here, regardless, because of the role and the instruction that tells all of his teammates. So even though we are sort of slower tempo and looking and happy to pass back or sideways, the fact that we're sort of told ultimately we want to get it to this guy, that naturally brings it at some point forwards. Like, for example, when the MRC has it and he could pass it to the MLC or to the creative forward, and they're both okay options, he's going to just choose the creative forward every time, which naturally brings it forwards. So, but yeah, without that, that's why we want the faster tempo, is because we don't have that natural point where it's gravitating towards. So, yeah. And then basically this guy can drop in, and ideally it bombs forward, he wins a header, knocks it onto this guy. Like, it just allows these guys physical attributes to shine. The issue obviously is where if they've got a defense that can handle that, and they got a midfield that or have a midfield that can overrun you now that you've got one less player helping link up. The issue is that it only works against some teams, basically. But that's fine. We can know it's a weapon. a weapon in our arsenal. Then the other issue with this tactic, is with that faster tempo, is that this double box-to-box thing doesn't work anymore at all, and you've got to change this configuration. It kind of depends on the team a bit, but yeah, you're changing one. What I was doing was changing this one to, I think, central midfielder. So, but yeah, it's not ideal. Because ideally, if this guy's deeper, then ideally the box-to-box isn't running into that same space as him. Ideally, he's on this side. This guy's coming back, this guy's coming up. So ideally, it's something like that. But the problem is that box. Let's just set it back. Sorry. Yeah, so it's ideally like that. But then you do have the problem that it is one less body getting forwards and blah, blah, blah. It's a different tactic. That's what it comes down to. It's just a different way. It's not a problem. It's just different. But different is okay because it gives us a different sort of option in matches. So what this looks like, when it's fully built up, is this guy is back a bit. This guy is up. This guy is up. This guy ends up. This guy is there as an option to come back through if you need. This guy's a bit behind him here in the middle. Now, normally, by the way, though, when this guy is up in our other tactics, this guy ends up back here, and he's normally a valid pass back option, basically, and he does get passed back to. So like the attack will break down, or they'll get a tackle, will come back out, it'll spill at loose or something, and our team will pass it back to this guy. This guy will otherwise hover up the ball and bring it straight back into play. But the issue here is basically once this guy's here, like all those situations are likely to just come to him. So you basically said that this guy used to contribute to attack, and now he doesn't. So even though he is involved, you're technically one man down. Because if he was up, then this guy would instead be involved doing the same thing. That's the problem. So the problem is he himself is still involved, but his involvement removes this guy's involvement, which means you have one less player in the attack. So it is like not as good as built up play passing around in attack, but it is sort of better for more like route one stuff. So it kind of depends on the team, the defensive setup, blah blah blah. So it does create an extra, an extra option, an extra possibility sort of thing. Why he's central and this guy's box to box? Because this guy has better long shots because he's faster to get up and back and so on. This guy's also just better at tackling, which means that like for holding the space and whatever is just a bit better. Obviously, when this guy eventually gets back, he may have to make a tackle, so it's not ideal that he has worse tackling, which is why when we play our regular tactic, we have them on the other way around because they both may track back and end up making the tackle, but this side is likely to be held up more because of the central defender rather than stopper who's stepping up and making a tackle, who makes it and you win the ball, or he doesn't make it and then it's coming in the box and bad things are happening. So on this side they have a bit more time to get back, which means that he has more time to get back and he's better at tackling, so his tackling is more likely to be utilised because they're more likely to be held up. On this side, by the time he's back, he's likely not necessarily making the tackle, right? He's just a body to get back, to help out, to be an outlet pass, to help the attack come through, to get in. He could make a tackle, he could be involved, but he's just less likely than the other side. So that's why we swap him. And also this guy is going to be generally more advanced when this guy's back. So, there is this sort of benefit that this guy will get up faster than this guy to help because he's faster. So, I'd say that's a secondary reason though. So yeah, so I think in the end we were playing friendlies with this, and it kind of just felt, what we'll do is we'll just play one now so we can sort of see. And hopefully, it kind of felt, because we didn't play like loads with it, we sort of ended up here playing the last couple, and it kind of just felt really good. It just felt better, more for what we're going towards. But I don't know. I do feel like the better longer term option here is, to not do this offset, to do it like this, to make this guy a poacher, to find that world-class finisher, and to find that, really well-rounded, like to eventually get the two, I say world-class finisher, it shouldn't be that hard when that's all we need and we don't care about any other attributes. So just seek out that like super high finishing composure player, and seek out basically this player, we're only going to get this player on auction, or we could develop him ourselves through Academy Trial and wait a year, basically, to maybe find him, minimum. Or we're just going to have to buy him in auction eventually. And he's, when he has all of those attributes that I said, he's going to be expensive, basically. So we need to wait till we got effectively 20, 30 million and splash him on that one guy that will take us to that next level. So that's probably a very late move in the end. To basically probably that we can't even make till we're in Division 1, and that's probably the type of move that's needed to get us from Division 1 to the Masters League. No, this is not good. Good save. Good tackle. Alright, so far it's looking like it might be an interesting match to for conversation points or maybe tactical changes, but it's not necessarily going to be the best match to show. Well, anyway, so one of the first points there is that was our striker, by the way, who did drift out to become the outlet. So all of a sudden he is involved. He gets a cross in. It was intercepted there, but it wasn't a bad cross. Yeah. So, but it does, it is sort of. At least we could see that. There's a potential down. Well, he has a shot in the end, and that's a striker again. So the striker is a little bit more involved, which is one thing that we wanted, but not. It is just generally more involved. It isn't necessarily the involvement we want, so to speak. Like he is involved drifting wide and crossing it, but I don't know. Like ideally, for example, he's in the box on the end of the cross, or he's or shooting it sort of thing. So it's not necessarily better in regards to securing the final results, let's say. But it's generally better in regards to more varied build up and being less reliant on specific things working. Or I guess to reframe and simplify, generically more efficient, but under lots of specific situations less efficient, and those specific situations may occur more frequently than not occur. Which it broadly means that it's, because the specific situations happen with a lot of frequency, that that kind of actually becomes the generic, more efficient one, as opposed to the one that's generically good for everything. God, I hope that makes sense. I know what I'm trying to say to myself. So straight away, that's what I'm talking about. So this guy as well, he has more space in the middle now because the striker's not straight in front of him. So when he has the shots and the chances, they fall into spots that his 50 whatever finishing is not so horrible. Chances that he can score with some reasonable efficiency, like the one that he just had. So I feel like even though we've not created as many chances or whatever, I feel like what we do create is a little bit better. but it's a small sample size, so it's not necessarily enough to tell. But on a high overall level, the overall impact this has on the tactic, but it's just a feel. That's the thing. You've got to start somewhere. You've got to play. You can't play 100 matches for everything you ever test. Like, you've got to just do things and get a feel and see if it's worth exploring further. Because an obvious thing I can think already, by having the striker offset to the left, like this, you're encouraging basically more play to happen down the left. It's obvious, right? Like, and you can sort of see it in this match. Like, there is quite a bit happening on the left side, which means that all of a sudden our left-sided defenders become way more, more important than before, when they had less to do or different things to do. So. And again, like, the right midfielder came in and did that this time. And, I didn't even think of this before, but arguably that's, another side effect of pushing the striker out to the left is that it creates more room for the attacking right midfielder to cut in. Gives him a bit more space, and he has low finishing as well, so it creates more possibility that he could end up scoring as well. If on the same top note, you also would be saying that it's, for the left midfielder, it's going to create less space for them to cut in, but it's not as much of an issue because they're not an attacking winger, so they're not up as much to cut in. I mean, it's super hard as well, because we do have to remember that, like, even without this change, like, we did, get, like, whatever it was, like, 8 clean sheets in a row and won all those matches sort of thing as well. Like, it's not like what we were doing before wasn't working either. But from a results perspective anyway, again, like, really central to where we want him. So this is what I'm saying. It just, for the person now, it feels like this is a good change. It just allows... it allows the limitations of our attacking players to be, like, less scope to be completely exposed, basically. And by exposed, I basically mean that, like, Dokken has, like... We have had a match, I think we could go back and have a look, but I think we have had a match, for example, where, like, Dokken, our creative forward, had 7 shots, and our striker had 7 shots. And they, not only did they not score off of any of those 14 shots, but they also got hardly any of them even on target. I think that's true. I'll go back and I'll check the stats. I don't know if I'm... Well, I think it's true. One of those couple matches where we... the last final training league matches. And that's the thing. It's like, is it better that they just had 4 or 5 shots each, but they were, rather than 7 or whatever, they just have less shot volume and much better chances? And the answer to that is, like, yeah, it's obviously better. So you can, I feel like this change, for example, it reduces the, again, another very good chance there. Like, it just reduces the probably the total number of shots that we can look to generate, but it increases the average chance quality, and I think the trade-off is just absolutely completely worth it. But the downside potentially is that that the attack is more balanced across the whole team, which is great, but it also means when we lose possession of the ball, it's quite often on the left side where it is now, basically, where it's lost, which means that our left-sided defense has to do a lot to do, which is fine. But it also just means that, like, we can't be as sneaky in regards to, like, when we've only got 3 defenders doing everything. We can't really be sneaky and say, like, only 2, that they only have to be good at specific things. because we can sort of say that the tackles generally won't be made by this defender. Like, once the attacks that are from the other team are coming from everywhere, kind of every defender has to be able to be like hold their own to some degree. You know, that obviously some can be better. They can have strengths and weaknesses and still do certain things more than other things, but you certainly just don't have the luxury of basically, which we had before. We've been moving away from it over time, you know. But we certainly had a tactic originally where we're basically saying one of those three central defenders basically doesn't even ever attempt any tackles. But that's just not the case anymore at all. So, or I guess to put another way, that one of our current three central defenders that we're starting is not good enough. We're going to have to get an upgrade, and that guy going to have to become the backup. This match felt very smooth, very safe, I think you could say. It felt very like, you know, we're in control and we didn't really need any luck to win this. And, another great chance. So that, I mean, that was right in front, you know. So the thing is, like, we got the 3 goals, but it's kind of like we could arguably have, you know, expected to have got even more. That's the thing. And even if they scored off of basically anything at all, that's not good enough. But, you know, anything at all that they created that was decent, and they scored off all of those chances. They didn't have 3 chances like that. So this was very, very in control, I feel. So I like it anyway, the change. We probably will end up, the thing is we've got, this other new signing. We haven't slotted into the team yet. So we're kind of setting all this up in preparation for that. So I think part of this whole concept, by the way, as well, we're saying there's more. Sorry, I missed a key point in all of this. It is the case that more is happening on the left. So the plan basically is that we will invert it, the tactic, flip everything around the other way from left to right. So that will then become the case that the right basically now has the problem. But that aside, the idea is that this guy will be the winger, not the attacking winger, but the winger on the side that is the weak defensive side that's going to have the extra pressure. And the idea is that he's going to help alleviate some of that defensive pressure because of his high speed to get back and his high work rate to get back and his relatively high tackling for a wide midfielder. So he's just going to help alleviate some of that extra pressure. So I know that I'm creating this extra pressure, but on the weak defensive side. But the hope is that stronger defensive presence in this winger role will help alleviate some of that. And then the other hope is just this guy can sort of be the backup central defender, and we'll get another top quality one to start. So that's the general plan. So yeah, awesome. All right, so that's what we've learned tactically. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next video.